Thank you so much, Johannes, for the welcome and for the introduction. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone from wherever you are joining. Well, it's a nice afternoon here in the Netherlands. It's cold. It's -3 degrees at the moment, but the sun is out, which is kind of a nice thing. You don't get that very often, so a little sun always helps. Um, Having said that, today I am going to talk to you about automation, and I'm going to talk to you about some of the failure stories. Now, most of the people, they like celebrating their success. However, it is important for us to learn from our failures as well. And I thought, why not share some of the stories for everyone, where we may find some common threads and learn from each other. So the whole idea for me is to share my stories and then probably listen to some of your stories and learn from each other. So, having said that, let's dive in. So, here's a little bit about myself. I am a principal consultant with Infosys, and I'm also a chief enablement officer with the Test Chat community. We are a community of more than 18,000 people on LinkedIn. We generally like to encourage people to speak up and speak out, and you know, the whole idea behind the community was to give people a platform where they could come and talk and share their stories and encourage each other. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Deb Brijesh and not Brijesh Deb, and you'll find me. You can find me with Brijesh Deb as well. There are actually two or three more people with the same name, but yeah, my picture is there, so you can definitely look me up. You can also find me on Medium, where I do a little bit of writing. Most of my writing happens on LinkedIn, so you can find my posts on testing, on agility, on leadership, on life, on philosophy, and so many other things. I'm also a mentor with ADP List, where I mentor startup founders, product designers, product managers, testers, agilists, and other people are in leadership roles. So this is a little bit about me. Let's dive in further now. So test automation. One of the favorite subjects these days, a buzzword, you may call it whatever, but without a conversation on test automation, no conversation around testing is complete these days. In fact, if you pick up a job description lately, you would find it focused on test automation. The market is looking for people in automation, and there is a growing demand. So what exactly is test automation? Well, I prefer to call it automation in testing, but generally it is referred to as test automation. So I'm going with this term for the sake of this presentation. Test automation is basically applying automation to certain test procedures using code or a tool. Now, this is a very simplistic definition that I could think of, because in a sense, you could apply automation to a lot of things in and around testing. In fact, in your own personal life also, you can automate a lot of stuff, and you will enjoy the benefits of that. Okay, a simple example of that is if you are using a calculator and you do 2 plus 2 equals 4, that's automation for you. In fact, in an Excel sheet, if you type some numbers in a column and you hit that, sigma sign there, and it gives you a sum, that's automation for you. So automation is basically, trying, to make use of machine or scripts to help you do something. Now, when you apply it to testing and certain testing procedures, you can call it test automation. Now, one common notion about test automation is that, okay, you have some test cases written already, and then you write some corresponding scripts for the machine to execute those test cases, then it becomes test automation. To be very honest, that is a very limited myopic view of test automation. Test automation or automation in testing can be used in more ways than what we can think of. So today I'm going to share with you some stories of what happened when I took up the journey of test automation and what were the lessons that I learned during my journey so far. Before that, let's look at what automation can do further for you. So automation helps you reduce redundancy. If there are any repeatable tasks and you have to do them over and over and over again, then it's best if you can let the machine do that. That way, the redundant work can be handled and you can have your time focused on other items that can be tested. It also helps us build faster time to market, which means that if you use automation, then you are increasing the efficiency of your testing process, thereby reducing the lead time for your product to reach the market. Your feedback cycles are faster, you are getting fast feedback, you can apply the fixes and then launch your product faster. The accuracy is much greater. Now imagine if a human were to do the task over and over again, then there could be inaccuracies due to human fatigue, due to tiredness, due to ignorance, due to errors that are made in judgment, due to other possibilities and disruptions. And that's where automation can help you. It can increase the efficiency because it is taking care of the repeatable tasks and it will do as per the instruction given in the script. So you can expect more accurate results. And as a result, it is less prone to errors. And finally, it provides you greater agility. That is, you are able to be more flexible, make the necessary changes because of the things that I mentioned earlier. It gives you a quick feedback, and then you are able to go back and say, oh, you know what? This is where I can add or remove certain process steps and make it more agile. I can accommodate changes to my requirements. So it makes you more agile in that sense. So having looked at the benefits of test automation, let's try and answer this question. If there are so many benefits, then why are you not so happy with test automation? Now, if you ask a lot of test engineers or testers about their journey in test automation, a lot of them will talk about these benefits. But if you dig a little deeper, you will hear stories of hitting roadblocks and failures, and not many people are so happy with test automation. Companies are able to produce results. Sorry, is there somebody trying to say something?
Somebody has their microphone up and is making funny sounds. I think it's a
Yeah, I got distracted.
echo. Yeah.
No issues. So the question is, when you talk to companies and organizations, they would say, you know what, we applied automation, we took care of all the aspects, then why are we not getting the benefits? Now, the answers to this question will come through some of the stories that I will share with you. Let me get started and I will discuss with you why is automation letting me down. So when I started my journey in automation, I stumbled in the very first step. That is when I looked at Selenium. Now that was the first. No, in fact, before that, in fact, I started, testing with Quick Test Pro, QTP, okay, which was then in those days known as Windrunner, and it had VB script as the language. So when I started, initially first few days were hunky dory. Oh, it's record playback. It's all fun. But then when there was a need to extend whatever is being done by record and playback, and you had to get into the basics of descriptive programming, I stumbled and I failed miserably. Not once, not twice, not thrice, but I failed at least 17 times before I got it correct. That is one part. The second part is there is a common expectation with automation, and that is 100% coverage. That in itself is a lie. You cannot have 100% test automation coverage. But that is what I encountered because when I started my journey and when I started automating stuff, my manager would walk up to me, or people would walk up to me and say, "Hey, Brijesh, you know what? We are looking forward to 100% test coverage. We are looking forward to 100% automation coverage. Can you give us that?" And I was like, "Okay, if you are saying so, let me try." And I never achieved it. Until date, I have never achieved it because it is impossible. Now, one of the thing about automation is to first decide if it is feasible or not, if it suits your context or not. And I can tell you this, that based on my experience and based on the research done by some companies, it is seen that what you are able to see as benefits of automation is only 20%, and there are 80% of the things which people ignore, and that causes a failure in automation. And the simple fact is that if you do not check for the feasibility of applications upfront, you are headed towards a failure. Then another important thing, when you talk about automation, you're like, "Oh, I am a solo player. I can fly solo. I can do everything on my own, and I can build up this nice framework, automate all the tests, and everything will be hunky dory, everything will be nice, and all the reports will be green, and so on and so forth." But seldom do we require, seldom do we understand that we require collaboration, that we need constant support of developers. We need to talk to fellow testers. We need to talk to the architect. We need to talk to the product owner. We need to talk to the customer. Without their inputs, our automation effort is going down the drain. This is something that I learned the hard way. Then, applying the cowboy principle where, people would say, "Okay, you see an error, you fix now and then move on." You know, that is an approach that a lot of automation people also use as they would use in a product. And that is where found a fundamental problem is that people do not know when and how to use this automation. And again, I learned it the hard way. So let's go into each one of them and see what I faced. So to begin with, stumble in the first step. So when I started doing descriptive programming and I started writing programs and I would compile and run them, my you know code would give me so many reds. My entire page would be full of warnings and error messages, and it was frustrating. And like I said, to get an all clear, for my very first descriptive program to work, it took me 17 attempts. But the best part is that at every step, I was able to reduce the number of errors and warnings that I got. I kept at it. So, a lot of testers, when they start going towards automation and coding, they are daunted by the number of reds that they see on their screen, the number of errors, the number of warnings that they see. It just scares them out. And if you talk to them, they'll say, "You know what? I'm not interested in automation." The real reason, in my opinion, is that there is a fear of failure. There is a fear of code. When people start writing code, they get scared because, sometimes they start, judging themselves. They start dismissing themselves and say, "You know what? My code doesn't work. I'm not a good programmer. I'm not a good tester." Well, if you were not a good tester, then, so the point is very simple, okay? And I say this to people, whoever is in testing. If you did not have the right logic, then you would not be a tester. You would not be in the technology field. The very fact that you are dealing with technology is that you are very logical. It's just that, you need to believe Yes, there is a certain procedure that needs to be followed. Yes, there is a certain syntax that needs to be followed, remembered. But what is also required is that belief. So if you stumble at the first step and if you get some error messages and warnings, you don't stop there. You try and solve those errors. You try and see what could have gone wrong. Why is it that it is occurring? Okay, how can I get rid of it? And that's where collaboration also comes into play. Talk to your fellow testers, talk to developers, learn from them. They are experts in coding. We may not be experts in coding, we are learning, but at the time of learning, this is something that really helps. You know, so you when you talk to other people, that boosts your confidence also. So it was my first QTP program, and I was writing, and it was simple VB script, and I was you know baffled by the number of errors and warnings that I got. But again, I spoke to my manager, and he connected with me with some of the experts in VB scripting, and I also spoke to the developers who had some more insights, and thereby they gave me some advice, and I kept trying and trying and trying, and after a long time, I was able to remove all the errors, and it worked. And I got a hang of how to solve those problems. I got accustomed to debugging. I started sitting with them, trying to understand, okay, when you get an error, how do you look for the root cause of that error? How do you solve that problem? How do you get past that error message? How do you tackle that warning that you're getting? And when those questions started getting answered, that's where I started making inroads further. Now, you know, unrealistic expectations. My manager once walked up to me and said, I want 100% automation coverage. I said, nobody will be able to give you 100% coverage. He said, no, I want you to try. And when I was testing and when I was trying to, compare my results, I would test it by myself and then I would write code and test it. And still I would not be able to do it because I would constantly be worried if that part can be automated or not. There are certain features which it is very difficult to automate. Okay, there are certain aspects where you cannot apply automation, but still there are managers who would come and say, and earlier in my career when I was learning, I would believe them and I'd go and try and try and try and still not get the result. And guess what? So many years later, I started my automation journey almost 15 years ago, and 15 years later I'm still stuck at the same problem because 100% automation is not possible. You cannot automate everything. There are certain things where you would need human intervention. And another interesting thing about automation is that, okay, if you have got certain checks that you perform, you may write certain scripts for those checks and you may validate those checks. But when it comes to testing, it involves critical thinking, it involves identifying risks, it involves asking questions, it involves analysis, and none of this can be automated. You cannot automate thinking. You cannot automate the process of asking questions, right? So, these are some of the things which I learned over a period of time. Now, you know, not getting 100%, not doing a feasibility analysis. So this is a kind of a survey that I did within the test chat community. And it is quite interesting that while there were 57% of people who always wanted to do a feasibility analysis, there was a large number who did not do. And the funny part is 12% of that is where the management does not care about a feasibility analysis. All they want is the automation to be done. And what a popular belief is, and this is thanks to testresults.io for this picture. It's a beautiful picture where the discussion boils down to a testing tool because it is believed that if you use a tool, you are automating stuff. I find it quite amazing that people think like this even after trying out automation for such a long time. And like I said, if you just add certain numbers using Excel, that is also automation. People do not realize the value of automation. You do not need fancy scripts. You could write macros, you could write utilities. You know, just to give you an example of how I discovered ways in which automation can be implemented. So we had a test procedure where we had to reboot our machines every 30 or every 45 minutes. And for that, we had to physically go to the lab and then reboot. But then we said that, you know, it's a pain to walk from the desk to the lab every time, and the lab is super cold with all those devices kept there. So why not write a Perl script which can trigger a soft reboot? And every time we need a soft reboot, we could go and do that. Yeah, in case if you require a power cycle or a hard reboot, where probably you need to unplug the cables and then replug them, then maybe you need human intervention and we would walk and go and complete those procedures. But as far as soft reboots were concerned, a Perl script of only 5 lines would do the trick. That is how easy automation is and how things can be done. Now, talking a little bit about feasibility analysis, when you start your automation journey, the first question that you should ask is this automatable or not? And if you dig deeper, you will ask deeper questions. Is it testable or not? And trust me, testability is a big challenge in a lot of cases. And if it is not testable, it will certainly not be automatable. If you pass the testability check, then you might think of automating a certain feature or certain functionality. Within that also, there are certain functionalities which can be automated. There are certain tests which look like low-hanging fruits, for example, UI tests, which you would say, I can automate those. Or these days, API tests or ETL tests, or your end-to-end tests, you can start automating those. But then the problem is that in the journey of automation, there are a lot of aspects that we overlook. Okay, when you talk about automation, you overlook maintenance, you overlook training, okay, you overlook test data, your test environment, and your deployments, your failure analysis. These are the things that you overlook. And that's where it is important for you to sit and analyze if automation is indeed feasible and it will give me the results that I need. There is a group of people, there is a group of managers in organizations who like to believe that automation will solve all their problems. But honestly, not everything is automatable. And even if it is, then the cost for automation is much higher than testing it without automation. So in that case, some people have to take judicious decisions. And that is where this feasibility analysis helps you. Talk to people about the functionalities, talk to the architects. See, okay, this is how the application is being modeled. So based on the model, can I apply automation here? Is a question that you should ask. And you know what? Sometimes you will get the answer as no. Take that answer to management, help them learn, help them help understand that okay, you know what? For a certain piece, for me to automate, I need, say, 300 hours of learning to implement that piece of automation. Take that into consideration because when you say 300 hours, there is a cost associated to it. It will make it expensive. So, is your management or leadership team willing to invest that much on automation? Is a question that you must ask. Anyways, moving on. Now, this is one of the older world quality reports. World quality report is very famous. It comes out every year, and Capgemini, Sogeti, and Micro Focus, which is open text now, bring out this report every year. And in one of the reports, in fact, this is the post-pandemic one, where most people said, about 80% people respondents said that They need to improve collaboration and use collaboration tools for testers. Why is that? That is because, like I said, there is a common belief that automation teams can operate solo. They can bring in all the success, they can automate, and they can have fun, and they can enjoy all the fruits. But they require a lot of help from other parties, from other organizations, from other teams, where it is important for them to understand that okay, developers can help them, business analysts can provide them certain ideas, product owners can give their inputs, fellow testers who are focused on, say, exploratory testing can give them ideas, and that's where collaboration becomes much and much important. Not knowing when and how to use test automation. Now, this picture is, if you try and automate garbage, what you will get at the end of the day is automated garbage. So, are you looking at the right set of tests that you're trying to automate? Do you know when to use automation? Do you know how to use it? Is a big question. And this is a question that I learned when I was trying to automate a product for a big navigation tools company. And we were writing this awesome framework, and then we realized that a lot of the tests that they were trying to achieve through automation could not be automated because they were so poorly written. It was absolute garbage that we were trying to automate. And what was coming out as the result was garbage because the tests kept failing over and over again. And we kept blaming, saying, oh, you know what, there's something wrong with our framework, there is something wrong with our people, they don't know enough. But then somebody decided to look back at the kind of tests that we were looking at, look back at the situation that we were looking at, and we found that it was all trash. And that is a big lesson that we learned there, that if you do not know when and how to use automation, if you do not know what exactly needs to be automated, you are calling for disaster. So, here are some possible remedies and suggestions based on what I learned during the journey. Number one is be self aware. 100% automation coverage is not possible. This is a clear remark that I have after so many years of trying automation. It is not possible. And if somebody is claiming that they are doing 100% automation, try and understand their scope. It may be true if their scope is very limited, and in that limited scope, where it may be feasible, they may be able to achieve 100% automation. But otherwise, 100% automation is not possible. Secondly, always do a feasibility analysis and understand what can be automated. It is important for you to know this upfront. On the fly, just don't try and go and automate stuff. Otherwise, it will again be disastrous. Third message: collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. Collaborate with everyone in the team, fellow developers, architects, your agile coach, your product owner, business analyst, whoever. You collaborate, you ask questions, take help in building your automation test framework, build an automation test strategy, answer some of the questions. Do not limit yourself to just test cases. And here I want to stress upon certain aspects. So I was talking about automation is in testing. When you're talking about automation in testing, and we looked at some of the challenges that we have, one of the big challenges with automation is test data. And often we stumble with test data is because we are trying to generate humongous amount of data through human intervention. Instead, why not use automation to generate test data for you? I think that's a much better approach. Then, secondly, your test environment. Why not automate your test environment creation? And after the test, if you want to kill your test environment, you can use automation to do that. You don't have to rely on human effort to do that. Then, test reporting, dashboarding. Why not use automation to build that? So If you just limit yourself to writing certain scripts and saying, okay, these pass and these fail, you will not be enjoying all the benefits of automation. Then, fourth advice is understand what aspects of the product can or should be automated. Get your basics right. Now, I heard recently somebody saying that they were trying to look at the options of automating usability tests. That's not possible because usability would require a lot of human intervention. Usability would require a lot of critical thinking. Usually, this will require a lot of visual analysis. Yeah, you may use visual regression tools for that, but to what extent? You will obviously need some people. You will obviously need a human to compare and to analyze and to give you the results. So think about it, get the basics right. And most importantly, educate yourselves and others about the latest tools and technology. Keep yourself abreast with technology so that you learn more and do better. Finally, the last message that I have for you is seek value and not return on investment. You will see test automation giving you more benefits than what you perceived. What I mean by that is what I mean by that is when you are looking for value out of your test automation, then you will derive more out of it. There is a common discussion at the start of every automation project, and that is around return on investment. Now, let me tell you this, testing is like insurance. Okay. And for insurance, you don't get returns. What you get are benefits. What you get is coverage. Same thing with automation. When you're trying to automate, you are increasing your efficiency. So what you expect in return is to make you more efficient, a quicker time to market. And that is the value that automation gives you. And that is where you should focus on. And with that, I would like to thank all of you and would like to take up any questions that may be there.
So, thanks a lot, Brijesh. It was a really amazing thoughts put out into words, and your experience. Absolutely, we all are aware, and seeing you with all of the experience that you've shared, I think we do have some takeaways from here. And yeah, do we have any questions? Anyone from anyone here?
Or a story to share. You mentioned you
Yeah.
want to hear the stories.
Yeah, I want to hear from the audience as to what kind of challenges they have faced so that we all can learn. People are being really nice to me by not asking any questions.
I could. Yeah, Shirti is there. Yeah, I can share a story
Please.
from. I was a developer in my first company, and we had a tester who wanted to automate with Selenium, which was actually funny because you said you started with Selenium, and he also started with Selenium and wanted to automate. I think some PWAs
Mhm.
or SPAs, I think were the first ones. And yeah, basically the whole code was a mess because he developed it on his own and he was not a developer. Then we had this mess, and I was given this mess to clean it up, and it was basically like, oh, I have to dump it somewhere, and I didn't want to hurt his feelings.
Well, the interesting thing there, Johannes, is that there is a tendency in a lot of companies, and because I'm a consultant, I talk to a lot of people. I have seen this quite a bit that people create different project for test automation. So they want to treat test automation as a separate baby. In fact, if you are thinking about applying automation, it should be a part of your product development lifecycle. It should be a part of the same project. Okay, and that's where you will reap the benefits. That's where, when you bring in somebody to help you automate, that's where you will be able to talk and understand, okay, that this is the application, this is how, the architecture is, and these are the models, and this is the code. And that's where people will get insights and say, okay, now these are the areas where I need to test. And so for this, these are the kind of assets that I will write and test it from there. Yes, testing through Selenium. Yeah, a lot of people do that because UI testing is probably the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to automation. Is the easiest entry into the world of automation, so people prefer that. And in my case also, it was like that. But then there is a lot more beyond the UI tests. And in today's day, if I look at the market, you know, if you look at the popularity of Selenium and Java combination, in fact, you will struggle to find people with a Selenium C# combination. But we know that Selenium works well with C# as well. And this is again based on my recent experience where I was looking for people for working on my project, and we could not do it because there were not many people who could be available with that combination. So what we had to do was, as a strategy, we had to apply a low-code tool saying, okay, for now, automation piece will be handled by this tool. And in the meantime, we trained our own people, right? So, our own people, we trained them, brought them up to speed, and then they were able to execute the test. I think there is a question that came up in chat. Okay, I'm an IT program manager. How do I encourage my QA team to move towards learning and applying test automation when they're stuck in traditional ways of testing? Interesting. Okay, so see, first thing is you need to understand what value you are seeking from test automation. Will test automation fit into your context or not? Okay, because just because we've heard so many benefits and I presented 5 benefits in my slide, and just because there is so many benefits listed around the internet and people talk about it, it is not necessary that it's going to work for you. So based on your context, first let's decide that. Okay. Then try and see, okay, look at the benefits and then try and think, okay, what is it that I am repeating? Maybe my regression tests. I am running them over and over again. So is it possible that I can take up my regression tests in such a way that the machine can execute and that my team can focus on other aspects of traditional testing? Okay, if that is the case, then that is again one of the low-hanging fruits for you. So look at automation from that perspective. Look at the benefits that you will get. And then slowly you will be able to motivate your team in learning and applying test automation. I gave you some more examples of where you can apply automation. For example, in your context as an IT manager, if you need to deal with a lot of test data, then how are you creating that test data now? Can you use automation to create test data for you? Then you use that. That is also test automation. How are you creating your test environments? Creating them and then destroying them after your tests are done. How are you doing that? If you have to do it on a large scale, then how do you do that? If you are doing it for certain enterprise level applications, then how do you do that? That is where you can use automation. So think about the various use cases of automation and don't limit yourself to just automating test cases. That's when you will be able to see benefits. You will be able to see people coming out and telling you, hey, can we try automating this stuff? And trust me, that is much more beneficial than just converting certain tests into scripts and letting the machine. I hope I have answered your question. Is it Whale or Wale? How do you pronounce your name? I'm not sure. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. It's Wale.
Wale. Yeah, so Wale, I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Sachin Sharma is asking, what's your perspective on low code, no code tools? Will this phenomena is going to capture the test automation world in future soon, or it will still be mandatory for me to have skills that today's automation engineers have primary, mainly level of programming in the future as well? Well, Sachin, okay, since you have asked for my perspective on low code, no code tools, I'll give you a perspective which may not be a popular opinion, but I personally think that there is no code tool that is available. There is always certain degree of code that is involved. And the reason why I say this is because all the low code, no code tools work on the principle of abstraction. That is, they don't let the user see what code is running in the background. And there is code obviously written to do the magic for you. And the level of abstraction can decide what is the amount of code that is visible to you or not. And there is certainly some parts where you will need to do. The other part is that the tool itself may be able to solve a particular part or a particular small problem for you, but not everything. And that's when you might need to integrate it with a third party tool. Okay. And that's where you will need to be able to understand and program. And that's why you need coding skills. Coding skills are irreplaceable. As a tester, you will always benefit if you learn coding. If you ask people who have been working with traditional automation for years, they will clearly say, hey, these tools are useless, they don't work, we don't see anything. But trust me, there are benefits of these tools. I have worked on many of them. In fact, I have researched 80 plus tools so far, and most of them have given me good results in a particular context. But like one shoe doesn't fit everybody, or one size doesn't fit all, you know, a single tool may not be your solution, and you may need to augment it with multiple tools. Just to give you an example, a certain tool may work really well with Salesforce. But what happens when Salesforce is integrated with something like SAP? Is it good enough? Or you may need to know the knowledge of another SAP tool, which should be able to help you. Yeah. So in that case, you should be able to deal with it. Okay, Sachin, I hope I have answered your question. Uh, Michael,
Sorry, Brijesh, to cut you
yeah,
there. We also have the panel discussion, Sachin, on the similar topic, and Brijesh is also going to be there in the panel, in our panelist. And feel free to join that panel discussion to learn more about what are their perspective on test automation. And we are definitely going to have a lot of fun around that time of the panel discussion. So we'll be announcing that soon. So feel free to join in. And yeah, that's it. I wanted to say, Brijesh.
well,
I
well, Apurva, thank you for promoting because I was going to do the promotion anyways later. So,
Great.
anyways, thank you for doing it. Okay.
We also have another question, I guess, from Michael.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, yeah, did you ever have discussions with developers? What can be automated with unit tests and what is left for UI automation? Example to prevent double checks.
Yes. So it's so you know what UI tests and unit tests are two different things that you're talking about. You are not talking about apples and apples comparison here. So when you talk about levels of testing, maybe unit tests, integration tests, system tests, and so on and so forth, it is very important for you to talk to the developers. If they have covered something as a part of unit testing, it does not necessarily mean that it will not fail later. You can apply automation to your unit, so to your UI test, even if that UI has been unit tested before. Because it may break somewhere else where the unit tests have not had coverage. So yes, it is important for you to talk to the developers. I speak to them on a daily basis on the projects that we do. We try to understand from them as to what level of unit testing that they have done, what are the kind of results that they are seeing, and how is it beneficial for me. Then I know at least the level of coverage that they have tried to achieve through their tests, and I see, okay, if I can spot something else outside of what they have tested. So, you know, the same applies for API tests. So your APIs may be unit tested, but then you can apply automation at your level and see from a tester's perspective as to what else you can find. Similarly, if you talk about the ETL tests, there also, they may be unit tested, your entire ETL functionality may be unit tested, but it is not necessary that it'll work all hunky dory. That's where you will need to step in, apply your logic, your tests, and you will see the benefits. So yes, it's very important to talk to the developers, and if you're specifically talking about double checks, well, sometimes the double checks are necessary. Sometimes it may be a duplicate effort, but it is worthwhile, in my opinion. Michael, I hope I have answered your question.
We have questions from Gary.
Yeah.
Do cybersecurity companies need QA work, and have you seen them this out in your in the job market? Gary also says that he's still trying to use his background in cyber, but transition to QA.
Well, Gary, this is a little outside the scope of this discussion, but security testing is one big area, okay, which is in high demand. And now that most of the products are looking at cloud adoption, security testing has gained prominence over compared to previous times. Yeah, earlier as well, there was a lot of scope for security testers, but now with applications going into cloud, with people adopting more and more microservices kind of architecture, security testing has big importance. And if you are making your building up your or using your background in cyber to transition to testing, please do that. Go ahead. It is a big field. There is a lot of scope. People are asking for security testers, and I can tell you this, Gary, that they're really well paid. So money wise, also it's a great option to have. Um, I hope I have answered your question on that one, Gary. Okay. The next question from Gary is, what stack is recommended for QA for someone starting out in career? And should I get a ISTQB certification? Well, interesting question. Okay. So, Gary, for somebody starting out in QA, it's very important to understand the fundamentals. Okay, fundamentals of testing. Because to be a great tester, you need to be a great test craftsman. So you need to understand and learn the testing craft. You need to understand why we test and how we test and what makes it possible. So try and answer 6 questions. The 5W1H, as I like to call it, or as it is popularly known as. What are you testing? Why are you testing? Who are you testing it for? When are you testing? Where are you testing? And how are you testing? If you understand this, then this will lead you to many questions which you will need to answer, and it will open up your mind and you will start learning more and more. So that is the first step. Now, then if once you have learned that, then start looking at automation as your next step. And if you start looking at automation as your next step, like I said, I mean, the lowest hanging fruit is UI automation, because that is seemingly the entry point into automation for a lot of testers. I began my journey that way, and a lot of other testers would do it. But understand that automation is not just limited to UI. You can go deeper into the application, into the layers, whether it is APIs or backend tests. Everything can be automated depending on the context of your application. Understanding the context is very important. So if you talk about tech stack, there is a huge stack, and I can't recommend something. Now, adding to that, there are a lot of low code, no code tools in the market, which are available, which you can start learning. A lot of these tools, uh, in fact, most of these tools have trial periods where you could experiment with them, learn, and see what kind of problems they are trying to solve. So that again is highly recommended. Coming to your question on ISTQB certification, there is a difference between my personal perspective and the advice I normally give to people. Personally, I do not like certifications because it's very easy to get one. It proves that you can memorize things and you can bring out your answers. So that is the proof that these certifications give. But on the other hand, there is a justification for these certifications as well. People would say, "How do I show my efficiency?" Well, certification will not prove your efficiency. If you have passed a certification exam, it does not mean that you will be great at work as well. Let me give you an example. There are more than 100,000 certified Scrum Masters in the world, but Scrum is still the most misunderstood terminology in the world. How is that possible? Similarly, in testing, there are hundreds and thousands of ISTQB certified testers in the world. But still, there is so much of misconceptions and confusion in testing, and people have to talk about it all over and over again. How is that happening? Well, let me tell you this, that for a beginner, an ISTQB certification will help because it gives you that check in the box saying, okay, you have a certification. So when your CV comes up against hundreds of CVs, you have that advantage of having that certification. So that will give you an advantage. That is one big advantage. Also, ISTQB is not complete BS. There is a lot of stuff. You can learn certain basics, certain terminologies. It will help you there, but it is up to you as to how efficiently you make use of the terms that you will learn. In my experience, I have seen most of the testers not doing it. They read for the certification exams. As soon as they get 26 out of 40 and they pass the certificate, that's it. It's over for them. And then they do what they feel like doing, or they just follow whatever is being followed in their organization. Now, when it comes to a tester, you should be able to challenge the status quo and ask questions and always be at it. Testing is not just about finding defects. It's about discovering those unknowns. It's about doing more than what your job description says. So it is important for you to understand that, and that's what basically you're supposed to do as a tester. So yes, all in all, if you are going for ISTQB certification, go for it by all means. Get that checkbox ticked, and then learn from the concepts. Explore those concepts more when you get to work. Okay, don't leave it at that. But personally, ISTQB certifications are not worth. If you really want to learn testing, then there are courses such as BBST. You can Google it up. There are courses such as RST or Rapid Software Testing. BBST is Black Box Software Testing. These are recommended courses. These will tell you about testing a lot more efficiently than ISTQB can. Okay, I hope I have answered that question. Then there is another one from you, Gary. Also, most jobs in QA are fully remote, like freely able to live in any country. Well, mm, it depends. It depends on the kind of problems that they are trying to solve, businesses are trying to solve. Now, for example, I work with IoT devices a lot. I work with industrial IoT applications a lot, which means if I have to test something, then I have to go to the lab. I can't do it from remote. I can't access the hardware remotely. But if it is purely software testing with today's technology, remote is definitely possible. Okay, a lot of jobs, I will not say most, but a lot of jobs in the US are remote. And after pandemic, people have seen the benefits. But right now, we are also seeing a trend where more and more bosses are calling their folks to the office. So, so the same would apply for testers as well. So, I mean, be judicious. Look out for opportunities. There are remote opportunities. You can test sitting anywhere for any application. Why just US? Anywhere in Japan or in the Middle East or maybe Australia or India or wherever. So definitely go for it by all means.
Yes,
Thank you so
that.
much.
Oh, sorry, Gary, for interrupting.
No, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
So it's already an hour and we want to wrap up. But before we want to wrap up, I want to thank you, Brijesh, for the talk and also the discussion. It was a lively discussion. I really liked this. And I want to inform you about the Ask UI Hackathon we are hosting from 3rd to 17th of March. Brijesh and Apurva already teased it. We have a panel discussion there with Brijesh in the panel. So definitely worth watching and participating. And you can win a prize worth of 900 euros. And Apurva already posted the link to our hackathon at askui.com. And if you want to promote your panel discussion even more, Brijesh, now is the chance.
Oh, well, yeah, definitely come for the panel discussion. I love talking, so panel discussions are always welcome. And that's where you will get a lot of insights. And since Apurva has posted the link, there was a question from Sachin on low-code, no-code tools. If you haven't tried Ask UI yet, I believe you should. Now is the time. So you should try. And like I said, I mean, I have tried more than 80 applications. Ask UI is one of them, and it has solved a lot of my problems. So it's a really good one. If you haven't tried, give it a try.